There's been some encouraging news in the race to make a coronavirus vaccine this week. And today, a subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee held a hearing with executives from drug companies leading that push about their progress. At one point, members raised concerns about vaccine safety. They also asked about the chances of vaccines being ready by the end of the year.
Moderna is set to begin its phase 3 study this month, but it's never brought a successful vaccine to market. Do you believe that your vaccine candidate will be successful? And if so, do you think it'll be available for distribution by the end of the year?
So, Chairman DeGette, thank you very much for the question. I think we're optimistic, cautiously optimistic, I think is the word others have used, that the vaccine will be successful.
A recent editorial in the Boston Globe argues President Trump will undermine prospects of a vaccine here in the United States. It says, quote, "For Americans to benefit from a vaccine, it won't be enough for one to be discovered and proven to work. To return to daily life as it was before the pandemic while protecting public health, a vaccine must be broadly available and people will need to actually take it. At present, the U.S. president is threatening both those crucial ingredients for success." Bina Venkataraman joins me now. She is the editorial page editor for the Boston Globe, and she served as chief policy advisor to the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology under President Obama. Welcome, Bina. Great to have you with us. So the U.S. is one of several countries racing for a vaccine. This editorial calls out President Trump's nationalistic approach to the coronavirus as especially problematic. Why is that?
So there are at least 9 contenders for a vaccine being developed in China, in the UK, where we heard some early provisional good news this week about a promising vaccine, and in the US. And it's not clear which country's scientific group will succeed in developing the vaccine that is most useful first. And for that matter, we don't know whether just one vaccine will be sufficient when dealing with this pandemic, or whether there will be a need for multiple vaccines down the road in meeting the needs of the public to protect public health from the virus. Also, importantly, it's not just about producing an effective and safe vaccine. It's about being able to scale up the production of that and distribute it across the population. And the challenge with the way President Trump and this particular White House has approached vaccine development, has approached global health during this pandemic, withdrawing from the World Health Organization, the United States, withdrawing us from those critical global conversations, is that it's taking a key element out of how global response to pandemics can be effective. So we would ideally, federal government, a functional U.S. government under Republican or Democratic leadership, would be trying to forge relationships, not isolating China by calling it the Kung flu or the Chinese virus, trying to form collaborations, staying in the World Health Organization to be part of those collaborations so that 2 things can happen. First, whichever country develops the vaccine first, that shouldn't matter in terms of access to that vaccine. So if it is developed first, the most effective vaccine in China, the United States wouldn't be left out of that conversation because of a sort of nationalistic rivalry between the countries. Secondly, it would be important for broad populations around the world to be vaccinated. Remember, we live in a globalized economy, and in order for life and the economy to return to normal, people need to be traveling across borders. Goods need to be shipped across borders. So it's not just enough to say we'll vaccinate the U.S. population. We also need to make sure that there's broad-based access around the world to this vaccine in order for it to protect people from this disease.
And so we've seen the president frequently publicly disagree with medical professionals such as Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's also disagreed with the CDC's guidelines for reopening schools. Could this impact the chances of people feeling comfortable getting a vaccine?
Yes, and that's sort of the second fear. Vaccine will become a national rivalry issue, that there will be vaccine nationalism, as it's known. And the second is that the public might not trust the vaccine enough to take it. Now, we know in the United States and other developed countries, anti-vaccine movements have been on the rise in recent years. It's been well documented and, in fact, led to some of the outbreaks of measles that we were seeing in the United States in recent years. And so that skepticism has been growing in the population. And the President of the United States, using the bully pulpit of the White House, has done a lot to undermine public trust in scientific information by sidelining and questioning and contradicting the statements of government scientists like Dr. Fauci, like the CDC and Dr. Robert Redfield there. And that serves to, I think, make the public feel confused about what the correct information is. And if you look at, for example, the ways that wearing masks was politicized, the ways that certain people from certain states where their governors were following the president's line didn't think they needed to keep socially distant, didn't think they needed to wear masks. I think we've already seen evidence that this particular president and White House is undermining basic public health advice that protects people and their lives. And I think if we look ahead to a vaccine, it's going to be really important for us to work at the subnational level, scientists, doctors, talking to their patients, helping them understand how vaccines work, helping reassure them about the process. I think it's great that vaccine makers are testifying on the Hill, and Congress may need to continue to summon such leaders and developers of vaccines to talk about the science of what they're doing and to reassure the public that they're taking the proper precautions, that the clinical trials are yielding results in terms of safety, can actually have faith in and trust so that they will, in fact, take the vaccine and be protected from this disease.
Right. And Bina, of course, we don't have that vaccine yet, but CDC Director Robert Redfield has said the coronavirus could be brought under control if everyone wore masks for 4 to 6 weeks. You mentioned the fact that wearing masks has become a political issue. Why has the U.S. struggled to get people to wear masks? I'm reminded a little bit of the argument, or at least the struggle, over making wearing seatbelts, a mandate. Eventually, people accepted it, but at first there was a struggle over that as well. Do you think this is a hill we can get over?
I think we can. It's certainly, we didn't start in a good place with sort of half of America not wearing masks because they were hearing from their political leaders it wasn't necessary. But I think we can get over it. And I think if you actually look at the recent polls, about 2/3 of Americans say they're wearing masks. Now, there's a high percentage of Americans who also say that they don't see others wearing masks indoors regularly. And this has to do in part with public perception of whether you're adhering to the rules and whether your neighbors are adhering to the rules. But I think a really important component here of getting people to do things that involve social change is to set norms, cultural norms, peer norms. If you see everyone you know wearing a mask, if everyone you know wears a seatbelt, and it would be strange to get into a person's car and not put on your seatbelt, which is the way it's become. Think about the way that norms around smoking indoors have changed. It used to be that, everyone and anyone could light up in a bar or restaurant. Well, now, even if you're standing outside a restaurant or bar, in a lot of places, it's kind of frowned upon to light up that cigarette. So I think dramatic change around social norms can happen very quickly. And I think we're actually seeing a fair amount of that happen during this pandemic, notwithstanding the minority of Americans who are objecting to wearing masks still. And particularly, we know it's important for those to be worn indoors where the transmission of coronavirus, of COVID-19, is the most likely to happen.
All right. Well, Bina Venkataraman, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight.
Such a pleasure to talk with you, Tanya. Thank you.